Внимание! Внимание! Срочное сообщение.
Attention, attention, International Startup Station Startup Bazaar is in orbit. These days, its board is going to become a platform for presentation of new technological products. We can see millions of stars which are going to support our stars, and people are going to present their startups to business angels, partners and clients to popularize their brands, to attract their attention, the attention of cosmic media objects, and to grow masses of contacts. Welcome to the exhibition of startups, and we go to the next session, Digital Manufacturing, Best Practices from Industry Leaders. We're going to discuss the future of digital manufacturing, current status of the digital transformation, new trends, technological opportunities, and possible future developments during the next stage after Industry 4.0.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые друзья.
Good day, dear colleagues and dear friends. Our session, Digital Manufacturing Best Practices from Industry Leaders, is commenced. Our experts will be Director General of Cifra Group of Companies, Igor Bogachev, Director of Development of Partnership Programs of Overseas SOE, Siemens, Alexander Rybinsky, Director General of Web Ventures, Oleg Teplov, Director of Marketing and Business Development of FANUC Russia, Alexandra Kochetkova, Vice President of Cluster of Skolkovo Foundation, Executive Director of Cluster of Industrial Technologies, Alexei Belikov, and Director General of one of the most promising Skolkovo startup, Cyberphysics, Sergei Nikolaev. Dear colleagues, today, in a cluster of cutting-edge industrial technologies, which has been shown in one of the two leading fields of Russian technologies, nuclear and space technologies, we can see various companies, and we can see the industry of 4.0 and smart fabrics and plants. We can see that they are developing and they are forming the longevity and welfare of many people. And it is very interesting and peculiar for me that one of the biggest consultants in the field of marketing reviews, markets and markets, has published two reviews, forecasts on development of markets of Industry 4.0. And this review says that by 2028 it will become $150 million. And another review was about the smart factories, which are supposed to reach $140 million. How these markets are divided is still unclear to me, but we can see that the growth tempos are more than 10%. It's quite obvious, and it's a great optimistic thing. And we would like to understand today who and how will be able to ride this wave. What technologies accompanying the production are going to be in the future? I would like to ask a couple of questions to Alexei Belikov. Let's call it a compensation for the fact that we had to make him sit in the audience hall instead of the stage because we didn't have enough room here. Alexei, tell us, what is the biggest future among the startups which you can see in Skolkovo, the startups with which you are working in the field of Industry 4.0? And very important, what new technologies are going to be instrumental in development of the smart factories and Industry 4.0? Oh, okay. So actually, I wanted to listen to the colleagues first and maybe to give some comments on that. Okay, I'll be improvising then. First of all, I would like to say that Industry 4.0 is a rather trivial term. Yes, we are working in this field. However, I would like to highlight two types of new technologies, which we are offering to the world and which are sought by our partners. And these two types are the first ones which I call the breakthrough innovations, the ones which are changing the business model, or the ones which are changing the business processes. And the second type is incremental innovations, the ones which are increasing the efficiency and reducing the expenditures. And indeed, Alexander, you said that more and more industrial partners are coming to Skolkovo Foundation and requesting both types of innovations. Of course, we are more interested in working with disruptive innovations, with the breakthrough ones. And what examples do we have? These are the technologies which help our partners solve particular and specific business tasks. For example, we had a very interesting task in front of us, set up by one of the biggest producer of agricultural technologies and agricultural machinery. And they said that they were creating the harvesters before and selling them. Then harvesters became service, and right now they want to sell field management as a service. And in order to transform themselves, they are changing the whole line of their products, and this is not an easy process, because this is a absolutely different business model and absolutely different approach, and they are looking for new companies which could be included in their cooperation. Another example, the metallurgy. They are much more conservative. However, the companies which were creating the carbonized electrodes came to us and asked us to help them to change their business model. And right now they want to sell the electrodes as service and not as a product. And of course they need to process the temperature and the storage conditions for the electrodes and so on. And they are looking for new technologies and new ideas, and they are ready to work with our startups on this to benefit this process. The examples are unlimited, but one of the clearest ones is Tesla. So they are not residents of Skolkovo yet, unfortunately, but they are transforming their business model, and everybody sees the Tesla car here and now. Yes, of course, they are selling cars right now, but as soon as they create the autopilot, they will sell services of deliveries from point A to point B. This is the transformation of their business model, one of the biggest examples. And quite often, this transformation comes with hardships, and it's not about the money. For example, the agricultural manufacturers said that they want to become IT company, but the programmers are not planning to work there because people are working from 9 to 5, and everybody has to work with this schedule, and the programmers are not ready to work in such conditions. And this is another factor why the new industrial companies, the giants from the conservative fields, are coming to us looking for new technologies. To answer your question, Alexander, it's not about the new technologies, it's the new culture of working with the technologies. Indeed, culture is very important, because some of them are opening their lab here in Skolkovo in order to go outside their traditional culture, because we can see whole bands of programmers who are running from one company to another, suggesting their own developments. And this is a very interesting trend indeed. And what is very good is that 3 years ago we had to explain the industrial partners of Skolkovo why we are actually needed and what could be the usefulness. Right now everything is vice versa, because we are working together very actively. We are implementing our startups, and dozens of them year by year.
Термин индустрии 4.0, который мы считаем уже фактически нарицательным,
Industry 4.0
взялся ниоткуда.
hasn't come from nowhere. In 2011, a rather big group of German companies, led by Siemens, have issued a document. I think it was less than 100 pages long. And they formulated actions which could be instrumental to preserve the leadership of Siemens and other German companies in the segment of industrial automation. This is how a new culture and a new stream have appeared. We have already discussed them with Alexei, but in 10 years things have changed. Of course, Siemens is still a leader in most of the industries in which it specializes, but the competitiveness is very high from the field of niche products and from the low-code solution companies. We can see those companies in Skolkovo as well. Does Siemens feel this competition or not, Alexander? And what are the new opportunities and capabilities? Basically, Industry 4.0 has to be refreshed because 10 years have passed. Let's update it somehow. Thank you very much for the question, dear colleagues. I think that Siemens saw importance in creating a particular trend in the market. They did understand how the market would look like, and 10 years ago they created this concept. Siemens went step by step to develop this field, and about $11 billion have been invested into creation of software in order to create full-fledged solution which is going to allow the customers to create digital twins. And in these 10 years, some of the solutions have been implemented. Most of them have been for a different degree. What we are working on right now is, of course, Internet of Things. Siemens platform, MindSphere, is also a priority. It helps us to control the smart production and to analyze the smart products. When we have a product line, we can always see that it has lots of sensors. We have a centralized data storage, and the information is being analyzed using a special algorithm. And you can always see where the potential error or the stop of the production might occur based on the temperature or vibration. The customers can also use this solution to equip their factories with sensors using 5G and local networks. In order for our customers who are producing their items and products to analyze the mode in which their goods are working, where a possible fault or error might occur. And of course, they're doing everything to reduce the time for the hold of the equipment and the maintenance when it's not needed. And of course, another trend is low-code platform. So Siemens has its own platform, Mendix, company which was bought by Siemens several years ago, and it also allows to use MindSphere platform, to use just business logic without the knowledge of programming, how to create various and to compile various blocks, to create software, to analyze the big data which was gathered in the production or from your end customer. One of the examples is Grundfos company, so you might know it. So this is industrial and customer pumps, a very big company which is equipping our sensors to their pumps to do the remote monitoring in order to provide max level of service to the customer and to provide a particular service and the working process which is not going to stop and is going to function 24/7. Alexander, thank you very much. Indeed, you have created a wonderful picture of the current level of the world industry as a frontier. And what is the next step? The Japanese have suggested Society 4.0, how the industry and the community might merge together. What is the answer of Europe? Because German companies are the ones which are building up the style and the work of the European industry. I think everything is interconnected because the next step should be the creation of products which would reflect the requests of the end user. When we are producing things which are not planned by the marketing, shown by the marketing research, but something which is really needed. When you have a digital twin, you can actually affect any external changes, whether it is some global changes like COVID-19 or the demands of the customer, because they didn't want to have something at some point, but right now they want to, I don't know, to have a car like this, with this equipment, with this color, and this way you have to change the product lines rapidly and on the fly. Oh, markets and market actually divided these markets, and that's the reason why, I guess. I think so too. Thank you very much, Alexander. So we heard a number. Siemens invested 11 billion euro into expansion of the market, basically into creating this market. And I would like to ask Oleg Teplov. Investments of ventures into Cifra company has become one of the biggest business deals of the last time in the digital industry. I checked it, so it's not the business deal of the last year, it's this year's business deal. Are you planning to go on investing into the Industry 4.0 sector, the smart manufacturing factories? What sectors do you see as the best ones as an investor? What is going to grow higher than these 11%, which is going to be shown by Industry 4.0 in general?
Thank you very much for the question. Of course, we are proud of the fact that we invested, and we're investing in a Skolkovo resident. And they're not just residents of Skolkovo, they're partners. They were a small startup, and now they're an industrial leader. We're not just planning to continue investing into Industry 4.0, but there's also this concept, you may have heard of it, smart everything, smart medicine, smart factory, smart education. And we think smart people, yeah, smart people. So that's a big one. We need to work on this as well. So, but our investments into digital technologies and the start of this technological partnership, strategic partnership, it's not the end of it. It's not like it just opened the door. And what colleagues just shared about designing and digital twins and digital factories, this is something we're going to move to. So there's another trite topic, so when they talk about digital twins and how they work and prospects of investments into these technologies of digital twins. So that's the number of when they cross tests physical with our cars. So physical test was one, but digital tests were over 1 million, and so they received 5 stars right away. That means you don't need to crash 100 or 500 cars, but you use digital twins, and then you do it once with a physical car. It can be applied to digital factories and their design, so they can be designed following new business processes. As colleagues already mentioned, not incremental business development, but a real industry innovation. So we call upon companies that work with digital solutions as part of Industry 4.0, come to us and to Skolkovo partners for investments. We'll be reviewing, considering those synergies that can be put together with our existing portfolio companies, and I'm talking about Cifra as well, because diversification of product line, a more comprehensive approach, more client-oriented approach in providing services is one of the stages of the strategy of the development of our portfolio companies. That's exactly what we do. So besides those major investments, we should also speak of the fact that with our partners and colleagues, with other development institutions, we develop a seamless process for company growth. It's not like we take them by hand and we bring them to the market and help them become unicorns, but we help them at every stage. We provide support as an older brother, being a development institution, and we share their risks, share risk with private investors. Thank you for that, Oleg. I think seamlessness, especially at early stages, is something we need to come back to. But I would like to note that at previous sessions, when we talked about materials, and I moderated that session, we said that calculations are more expensive, more and more expensive, and more complicated. Sometimes it's easier to, to use a real car for testing. So financial indicators should still be considered. Absolutely. So after this story about Cifra, I would like to turn to Igor Bogachev. I was very interested about marketplace, because Cifra was perceived as a player working in the field with specific devices about connectivity, and all of a sudden you have this marketplace as a response to this hype. What kind of business objectives do you pursue with your marketplace? What kind of solutions can you buy from it? Will it be accessible to international players? So it's a domestic thing. So will you be expanding that ecosystem, or you will stabilize it in the nearest future? But so far, we have very few such marketplaces out there in the industrial sector. Thank you very much. A marketplace is just an eco platform. It's just a different word that we now use. If we consider how large leading corporations live and operate, and different studies and practical experience show that in order to be transformed, you need to understand first what should be transformed, what processes and you have, what data they generate, why do you want to transform your company, what financial results can you expect. And against the background of those large transformational processes, every company has an objective of building an open ecosystem around itself, with tech players, startups, excellence centers, teams, etc., that use the same platform and play by the same rules. So it can be called as a single digital platform, or you can call it a marketplace, but those rules should be accepted by a large number of players. So to populate such a marketplace or platform, that what really determines the success of your business, an industrial company can dictate its own rules, unlike B2C. If you want to work with Shell, so they have their platform. You either work following their rules or you don't. So you as a startup or as a tech company, you may have access to data, what programming languages should be used in your applications, etc., and what that major industrial client wants. B2B is different in that respect, that the client dictates the rules and access rules to processes and data. Consequently, being one of the suppliers, tech providers for large companies, we understand that on the one hand, We cannot offer and implement all the things that our customer wants. On the other hand, our customers understand they're not able to implement, even though many industrial companies have become IT companies these days, not just banks, but they're not able to do it. All the objectives, all the applications they would like to have, then they cannot do it. So, as a result, an ecosystem of open innovations may be created, or a marketplace of products and technologies and applications following the same principles and using one platform just that large corporations already have. So we see our role here to provide a tool. This platform is a tool, and then other companies and startups and smaller vendors may use our platform to run their applications and create a marketplace for major industrial companies. So it's not a marketplace for everyone. It's a marketplace inside for their own. Yeah, that's right. And we have such examples with Gazprom Neft, with NLMK, when they selected our platform of industrial internet for industrial automation. On the other hand, we trained various companies who are suppliers on LMK or Gazprom Neft, so they can implement their products and applications on our platform. So this is how you create a marketplace. So if I heard you right, even though you did not respond directly, so those are separate business objectives. So there are no. So this is to help sell all of the other things. It helps the customer basically to acquire those technologies and run those projects, and also to implement digital transformation and to do it faster, because we give this platform-based approach. It's faster with it than without it. Is that an answer? Yeah, you answered. So the way you wanted to answer. Okay. So we departed from that topic, and we dove into the digital arena. But let me come back to this, that digital technologies help real processes. They help work with hardware, and we have a Funrook representative here, the global leader in industrial robotics. And they opened in Skolkovo their engineering center, and we are very proud of it. Alexandra, can you tell us what kind of challenges you see out there? Industrial robotics develop quickly, but where do you see shortages, and where your industrial robots may not be enough? So thank you for your question, but generally digitalization, robotization are the processes and notions that go hand in hand. As digitalization develops, companies also raise their requirements for industrial robots. So computer vision sensors that transmit data and which is later analyzed. So robots become more smarter and smarter, and they're more adapt for customization. Another trend that we see in robotics is simplification of processes, and also development of collaborative robots that help companies to use those robots next to people, so they're easier to operate as well. They have control systems, so without special training, you can install them there, and in an hour you can operate them. So this is what we see happening. And besides major companies that automate their facilities. There's also a trend to automate smaller companies that see a need to implement robots on their industrial sites. So when you talk about smaller companies, so what in business sectors you see this happening? Because some small companies think of robotics as being too expensive. So if you talk about European practices, during the COVID period, our robots were used in labs where samples were taken for testing. So industrial robots were used there. In Moscow, a KFC cafe was opened where there's a robotic arm that provides services to visitors. So these are not standard areas of application of industrial robots, but companies see a need there. Also, we see in food industry, in shoemaking industry, not just the automotive industry where robots have been traditional, where assembly line, with all the car components where they put together, it is done by robots, but also in electrical engineering and medicine, robots are used more and more. So whenever we model or run to calculate efficiency, then companies realize that it makes all the sense in the world to buy robots. So how robots that basically have been part of large companies for a long time, but now those companies change and data flows that were in place, and now they're generated by digital twins as well. So IT systems are more and more loaded. So can robots adapt to those changes? Absolutely. That's exactly what I was talking about in the beginning, that this trend of digitalization of companies raises requirements for industrial robots. That means controllers should be equipped with software and hardware that support the ease of their implementation. In our engineering center, so we use 5G for all of our equipment, so we monitor all the equipment using those systems. And you can monitor all the processes. So 5G becomes economically justifiable, like in your situation. So we provide an opportunity for our clients to see it, how it works and how it can be implemented. Thank you very much. Since we talk about the transition from digital twins of products that Oleg mentioned, and we talk about digital twins of industrial companies, I would like to ask Sergei Nikolaev to tell us about requirements. What today's clients ask for in terms of digitalization of processes, because those processes were only in people's heads, in designers' heads, but now it's part of a new business, of new transformation. How do you see prospects of that? Thank you for your questions. I think prospects are tremendous. First of all, having heard the previous speakers, I should say that digital transformation faces no barriers. It seems like that, but actually things are not as smooth and not as good. All the real processes of real transformation, and when we talk about real digital twins and predictive analytics, they all require data. They require big data, a lot of data. And when you come to your industrial client, so you explain all of that to them, and they start realizing they really don't have big data. They have very few data, and the quality of data is quite poor. So that gap still exists. And many companies work out there who help to fine-tune those processes. But for data to be of sufficient quality for algorithms to learn from them, some advancement is required. We are not there yet. So you need to develop a system and offer the system, and this is exactly what we do. So that unique knowledge that is still in the heads of engineers, those who create those processes and products, so how that can be transferred to algorithms. So sometimes we hear this request, this exact problem. I work at a company, for instance, I'm a manager, and I have several amazing, tremendous engineers that work with me who know how it works, but they may have a difficult time explaining this, and transferring that knowledge to a machine is a difficult task. So we build a digital model of a process or a product, and just like one of the previous speakers, when he talked about Auro's car, so we use it and we add knowledge of those people to it, and also the knowledge of physics. And we need to have predictive analytics for complicated equipment. Multiple times, thousands of times, we break that component to make sure machines learn from it. So that's the key barrier to scaling those technologies. To have those models of technological processes, how equipment behaves in different situations. It's not for people to know it, but to have it described in one language, in the language of mathematics. Thank you very much, Sergey.
This mathematical language is clear to the people who are making decisions from the business point of view. Well, once again, depends on their first education, first of all, and their professional deformity. But what is an advantage of this language is that you can achieve various levels of abstract and raise the information to the style and the level which is going to be clear to the managers and the leaders. Usually it's numbers, money, and then it becomes very clear. Okay, visualization using money. Yes, it's a great role, plays a great part indeed. Indeed. Speaking about the result which is going to be received by the owner in the end of the digital transformation, has been a topic of many startup villages, and last year it was the topic of remote startup village. Igor, there is an opinion that a company might not be able to understand the business processes, and it means that the digitalization is not going to help it. Digital mess is even worse than the physical mess. Is it possible to do something about it? And you, by doing the digitalization of companies, do you help the companies to overcome the changes in the business processes? Or this is all outside your interests and the interests of the companies close to you? Well, let me argue about the business processes. Well, you know better, of course, that is why please argue. I believe that the business process automates things, and in order to transform things, you shouldn't create an order. You should just create the business processes accordingly. But I would like to say that I see lots of owners, personally, big companies which make decisions about transforming the business or not. Well, over here we're talking about the industry, about manufacturing, not exactly business. We're talking about transformation of the main operational processes of our customers. And as a result of this transformation, we are supposed to receive additional troubles, actually, and, of course, additional value. You either have to increase the volume of the sales in the result of the transformation in order to earn more by producing some better product than exists here and now, or you should reduce the expenditures, and by that You should increase your financial values. And a third option, when you just need to survive. You do understand that actually you are going extinct in this market. But honestly, I haven't seen such examples of companies to transform as fast as possible to simply become champion instead of leaving the market half past dead. And of course, the most important is to set a task of helping the customer to earn more, either by increasing the quality of the product or by increasing the margin. In general, this is most complicated thing in the whole industry. The industries are conservative. The industries of the real economy sector, and of course all the processes are already established. If we take oil extraction, people are using one and the same technology on and on and on. Where are the needs to increase the amount of oil which is extracted, or to increase the speed and to decrease the expenditures for building oil wells? Somewhere over here, the digital transformation should lie. How do I tell it to the owner of the oil wells where the money is? That is the task which has to be solved by any entrepreneur who wants to work in the field of Industry 4.0. When we learn to do that, we will have lots of transformational projects. Well, I would like to argue a bit over here. When people are talking about a more quality product, products of better quality, I would like to speak about Volkswagen. So they have been driving 1 million kilometers in the better days, and now it's 250,000, and it's supposed to be okay because the exchangeability has become more relevant, and we're talking about a more demanded product and not about a product of a better quality. Oleg spoke about flexibility and client orientation. So basically, you can suggest this using the digital transformation. We're not talking about quality only. We're talking about the flexibility of the manufacturing process, right? Or am I wrong here? And this is something unattainable. Everything is attainable sooner or less. It depends on what you are paid for. Yeah, what you are selling, right? Exactly. We're talking about unicorns here, about startups. So let's not talk about technologies, let's talk about money. The technologies are not bought by the customers. The results are. The results of implementing these technologies are. For example, we're trying to implement the model linked to the payment for the actual used time and technologies, or the actual operational process which has been implemented. I don't know, payment for the raw materials from the extraction point. So, and payment based on the kilometers logistics shoulder. Let's say Siemens comes to us and they say, we need to pay, you need to pay for this like that, so you brought the materials. So, and you have paid this amount of euros for each ton, for this amount of mine spheres. And using this logic, we can see how it works. So, when we are paying for a taxi, we are paying for the service and not for the rent of the car. We should go in this direction, and this is going to help the customer to shift expenditures from capex to opex and create the actual results. And I think that this is the transformation, when you stop doing the automation and you are trying to link yourself to the business and the financial values and numbers of the customer. Yes, in the end, the main thing is what you allow your customer to earn. And I would like to ask another question about the field, which is not really favored by people. People do not like to pay for it. This is the industrial security field. If we look at the European regulations of the industry which I worked in, 20% of each project's investment goes to security. Rustam Milanov, could you please tell us how exactly you are implementing your system and how you are introducing them into this technology of digital transformation? What allows the industrial security to explain what is going to be won by the owner of the business? First of all, labor protection and industrial security is an integral part of any production process in Europe, and it is a part of any manufacturing line. If we're talking about the structure, security and safety are being managed by all the people. So once again, health, safety, environment, once again. And if we're talking about the Russian market, which is developing rapidly and is implementing the high-end practices from the point of health and security, the main thing is the economic benefits which are considered here. Okay, let's talk specifically. What is the benefit if the people are implementing your solution? How do you explain it? A very simple example. Automation of work in the hazardous fields gives simple economic effect from the point of view of simple equipment, transport expenditures, paper, and many other expenditures. So the economic return of investment is about 3 months. Starting from 3 months. For example, we implemented this project in one big oil company, the investments would be returned in 3 months. This is very interesting and impressive. Now I'd like to ask another question. We have little time. Let me ask about startups. In this complicated and very complex field, I would like to ask you to answer with a few words. Alexander, Germany, recently, I have been living there for quite some time myself, has shown a great growth of the startup movement. The engineers are becoming the technological entrepreneurs, and it's being done very fast. How does Siemens work with this? Indeed, you are buying M&A, and M&As are multiple. As any world company, you know this better than anyone else. But how to keep the efficiency, preserve the efficiency of these startups? I can see both positive and negative cases. There are cases when startups would die out inside a big company, and in some other cases, they would be developed. So are there any know-hows on working with average, medium, and small companies? Well, Siemens is a big company, and we are working differently with startups. Sometimes we are providing them with natural grants, and we are supporting them by providing our solutions on the beneficial conditions. We're working with Skolkovo as well, with the Center of Collective Usage. We have started working with them last year, and Siemens Accelerator is available to all the startups. You can pay a special price for that, and the startup can compensate up to 70% through special grants, which exists inside the Skolkovo Foundation. And we are signing the first contract with one of the startups, and I think that about 6 or 7 are still processed. This is a focus which we have in Russia. We have the same program all around the world, and the startups have the access and availability to the technologies. There are demands to the age of the company, and we started with Skolkovo in Russia as the most developed and the biggest techno park with most amount of startups and greatest interest. Thank you very much. It's quite clear that providing people with tools is one of the most important things for any startup, and people need to have discounts in this field. But if we're talking about the seamless work, which we have already mentioned today, during the early stage, people just need money. And the money
в самом начале почти нет в России.
almost does not exist in Russia in the very beginning. If we're talking about IT startups, some things should exist, but if we're talking about deep technology, so I think that situation is very sad there. What is the reason for that? Oleg, could you tell us? Industry has great amount of tasks, as we can see. Why can't we find the money before the startup to raise the startup? And maybe you are planning to do something in this regard. Yeah, it was a joke. Of course, we want to do something in this field, but we don't know what, right? Well, no, of course not. On one hand, the answer is rather simple, but all the parties have to join in the effort. Deep tech, the field which you said doesn't have too much money, is not developing due to various reasons. It's not that we don't have the entrepreneurs, we have the minds and we have the ideas. And I believe that if we structurize this market properly, we will be able to find the solutions. Both we could put them into marketplace, they can be in digital, and they can be in the market. But the question is whether the corporations and the companies are ready for that, whether they are ready to work with this market, to take these technologies and take the risk of piloting these solutions which would show economic effect in the paper when we're talking about the return of investment, of added value, this and that. But on the other hand, the startup is working, and that's it. Why would we go there and invest there? So that's the idea, basically. We and the partners and the clusters and the market have been forming this ground for several years, and we already have some fruits. Big companies are thinking about digitalization because increasing the efficiency using the classic way of reducing expenditures does not work anymore. We need to shift to another level of moving towards efficiency. You know, when I'm speaking to the colleagues how these things should be done, so we should have the same thing, but with different frosting. So it's all about the startups which are looking towards the digital industry to see the priority segments for the corporations which actually can increase this value, and to give the startups specifications, to give the ideas to move towards those things. This is the task for the development. The entrepreneur and the corporation should start speaking the same language. They should be on the same page, and this is what is going to give a great synergy effect. I totally agree with you, and I believe that R&D departments in the corporations shouldn't be the additions to the corporations, but they should be the leading ones. We will be discussing it in the Rybinsk forum tomorrow, actually. This is the corporate culture, by the way. Yes, but Oleg also talked about the complexity of the first pilot, and as far as I understand, we had this experience, I mean, not we exactly, but Cifra had the experience of receiving the support for the pilot from the state, the subsidies, and so on. Igor, a couple of words about whether it was efficient or not.
Undoubtedly, I should agree that startups do need money, but not only at the early stage. But I think startups should not receive grants anymore. They should receive orders from their clients, because it leads to results faster. It's more responsible. In following this logic, all those subsidy programs for the first implementation, it's a great tool, in fact. if you put yourself in the shoes of a major company and you imagine, so that's a startup or from Skolkovo, it's a well-known startup, and they come to change your key production process. That's a major risk. So some support is needed. So financial and moral support are needed. And with our clients, we use those tools, and Skolkovo offers them as well as other development institutions. The idea is quite simple. Companies come to you with their investment projects. At early stages, they can get up to 80%. I think these days it's 50% subsidies to implement those technologies. I think it's an excellent tool that should be used. And this year, the Skolkovo Foundation announced a new tender. And with our clients, we are preparing to submit applications through the website. Thank you very much. In fact, that tool looks promising, and IP is held by the designer, and there are opportunities for scaling. So which is also an objective for subsidies. I would like to thank all of our experts for a very interesting conversation, for your attitudes, sometimes flexible, sometimes rigid, but still. So if we provide investments only at early stages, then motivation will be gone. So flexible approach where grants should come to an end, and I think they should, and where they should switch to investments. I think it's very much needed, and development institution with industrial partners, with government authorities, should be able to figure out how to best transform the system to make it more effective. Thank you all very much. Many thanks to our listeners.